Hello everyone, thanks for joining us. This is a meeting of Frome Town Council. I'm Andy Brintmore and I'll be chairing this evening's meeting. We want to make sure our meetings are available to as many people as possible, regardless of where they are. So we're using a hybrid setup setup in person here at the Town Hall Chamber and online via Zoom. For those in the room, a little housekeeping. The emergency exit is in the rear corner of the room, and the assembly point is at the far side of the car park. Toilets can be accessed at the end of the corridor on the right-hand side, and there is an accessible toilet to the right of the lift, which I think is that way. For panelists on Zoom, please use the electronic raised hand by clicking on the participants button at the bottom of your screen. For those in the room, please raise your hand. For attendees on Zoom, please pose questions through the Q&A board. Attendees' names will become visible on the questions board for the record as your question is answered. For those attendees in the room, please raise your hand. Tonight, Peter will clerk, Laura will manage the slides and take the minutes, Rachel and Sarah will manage the questions board, participant settings and the IT generally. The meeting will be recorded for minuting purposes, and we are live streaming to our YouTube channel. Okay, so we're going to head to item 1, which is to propose that this is a formal meeting of the council, and informal meetings of council committees have finished to be seconded and voted on. So I would like a proposer for that one, please. Andy Palmer, seconder. Maxine. All those in favour? Thank you very much.
So that's the majority.
So item 2 is a short presentation from John Price of Frome Tennis Club. Where is John? Hi, John.
Can you hear me? Hello.
You switched it on.
Yeah, right, that's good. Okay. Right, good evening. Thank you, Andy.
Just make sure John is speaking directly.
Right, okay, right. We have the first slide. Right, okay. Well, 2 things to bring to the council's attention tonight. One is just to update you on things that have been happening as far as the community court floodlighting is concerned, and also Arthur Close is going to speak on a suggestion we've had for improving the security of young people when they're playing tennis. First of all, I'm here to update you on the tennis developments in the Mary Bailey Field, and specifically the floodlighting project. It was a little while back, I think it was in September 2019, when the tennis club last addressed this committee, or certainly it was, I think it was the Council Matters Committee actually, not this full meeting, on the proposed scheme. There have been significant developments since then, and now seems a suitable time to review where we are. So just a quick reminder of some background. The Town Council confirmed its support of the project back in February 2020, which enabled the tennis club and Chris Stringer, the environment manager, to finalise the planning application. The planning application was made by the council in December 2020, with the tennis club acting as agent. This was approved by the district council in June 2021, with only 2 minor conditions. That was the requirement to install 2 bat boxes and the requirement to install 1 bird nest box. In a parallel development, the club has also received planning approval to replace its old wooden clubhouse with a new community tennis pavilion, a building that will be open for public players as well as club members. Sufficient funding has been obtained to make a preliminary start on this, and preparatory work will commence soon. The club would like to thank the Town Council for its substantial grants scheme contribution recently made to the project. Although most of the money has been secured through grants, it's been necessary for the club to secure a loan as well. The next slide, please. This is a record of the bookings of the community courts over the recent 3-year period. The use of the courts has, as you can see, has grown significantly over the past 3 years, as confirmed by the number of bookings. This equates to a 216% growth or a tripling of the use of the courts over the 2 years, and we think is a major success story. Now, this high usage figure is beginning to present us with some problems. Many people who live in Frome work elsewhere, and they are unable to play during the daytime on weekdays. This is not a problem in the summer, as they can play in the evenings, providing courts are available. But at the darker times of the year, they cannot currently play at all on weekdays. Also, darkness from October onwards causes capacity problems between junior coaching sessions and adult play, whereby coaching normally held on the community courts in late afternoons has to move onto the club courts, and no courts are available for adult players. So to continue to grow the game of tennis in Frome and encourage more participation, we believe that floodlighting is necessary. Next slide, please. Our recent fundraising has been based on a price of £52,300 for the floodlighting, but this was obtained back in 2018. And there will be a significant increase, we believe, and we will shortly invite tenders to obtain an updated and more accurate price. The club has been fundraising for both projects in parallel, that is the floodlighting and the pavilion, but priority has been given to the pavilion. But the club has made considerable progress with funding the floodlighting as well, and the current position is as shown. So the cost, we believed at the time, was £52,300. We've managed to get a Sport England grant of £32,350, a Somerset County LTA grant of £3,000, and a recent private donation of £500. And we came second on the Astor Green Token scheme for a particular month, coming a poor second to Frome Football Club, but beating Buckland Dinham Community Association easily. That gives us a total of £36,050 with a shortfall of £16,250, but that shortfall will be bigger than that, we believe. The club has been fundraising for both projects in parallel, and yes, we've got the chart here. Now, we have taken a loan to help with the pavilion costs, and the club is not really in a position to take a loan for the floodlighting. One of the problems being we only have a license to operate the courts for 6 years, which was given to us by the council. Very little can be done about that, we believe. So it's not really feasible for us to seek a loan for the work on the floodlighting, although interest-free loans are available for 5 or 10 years from the LTA. So we've raised about 70% of the funding necessary to provide the facility for the town based on existing estimates, but we're unable to contribute any more in the short term. Obviously, grant opportunities may arise, and we will apply for them on an opportunity basis if they do. The opportunities are likely to be few and far between, and current predictions of inflation means that we will be swimming against the tide. So this is where we are, and we are seeking assistance to enable us to fill the gap so that we can help provide this asset for the town. That's it. Any questions, please?
Yes, John, I'm pleased that you've got planning permission. Well done. I'm really pleased about that. And it's encouraging what you've got. So presumably you've now got 3 years to start the build and do something. And if you make a significant start, then you can keep this going for a long time before you finish it, perhaps. But obviously you want to finish it soon. I'm just, so that's great. I think that's fantastic. Just wondering if you could reduce that shortfall by use of volunteer labour in any parts. Have you considered that kind of approach to this problem?
We haven't actively considered. I mean, installation of floodlighting is a technical thing, really. And I would have thought, personally, the scope for a volunteer effort is very limited indeed, I would say.
Okay, I'll just,
Yeah. I mean, we
if you
would.
want to dig some holes or something like that, maybe
Right,
you could
okay.
get that bit done. You want something mixed.
That's what the main stuff, but I mean, you tend to think plant machinery to be balanced as well, but, we consider anything to bring the cost down, but, I mean, those costs we've put down there are contractor's costs, with the contractor doing the whole thing.
But I would personally be happy to try and support you in whatever way I can to help you get the shortfall. So, if you think of any sources of grant money or finance, then give us a bell and I'll see what I can.
Yeah. I mean,
fundraisers and so on, it might be possible.
yeah. I mean, obviously, the question in our mind is there any possibility that the town council may be able to assist us? We have to ask the question. Because we believe we are running the courts on behalf of the town population.
That's something we'll have to talk about.
Something that obviously can't be agreed tonight, I understand that, but perhaps we'd like to float the idea for councillors to consider.
I think we're happy to discuss that.
Yeah, of course, yes. Could I now hand you over to Arthur Close? We're just going to talk about some security improvements that we can make.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Is it on? Ready to use. Yeah, we're good to go. My name's Arthur Close. Hello, everybody. I'm the treasurer at Frome Tennis Club, so I look after the coffers very carefully. Just to reiterate John's statement here, we have maxed out our loan situation with the LTA. We can't go any further. We need to retain a sinking fund in the club as well to maintain the courts we've got and maintain these facilities at the community courts too. Tennis has really taken off in the past, I'd say 24 months in a big way here. So this is quite an important aspect of developing overall tennis across the community. I'll just share with you the next slide. I think should show you the proposal around. Yeah, that's it. Cool. So at the far side, you'll see a large yellow block. That is the new pavilion, and small yellow blocks attached to it. That's the new pavilion that we're going to be ground on quite soon. Initial work before Christmas. And there's a secure gate going to be positioned in red. You see at the end there. Coming all the way across here, you see these are the community courts here. And this is the strip of land here that runs between the community courts and the main, what we call the club courts here, okay? And there are two aspects we just want to draw your attention to. Number one, when we're using these courts here, we need to be very aware of child welfare, okay? So we need to be able to have these courts open to the club courts and the security here, whilst maintaining this part closed, this alleyway part here. So hence we're proposing two gateways, one north, one south. And this gate here, which sits normally within the club courts, the community courts will be retained there. The second aspect of this is we're very keen that we opened up tennis to everyone together. That this doesn't become a Frome Tennis Club tennis thing. So we're building this pavilion, but the idea is it's open to all members of the community. So the idea is open the whole area up. So anybody come into this area here and use that facility. Of course, using the community, using the club courts, requires membership of the club, etc. You can imagine. So that's what we're proposing. I think it addresses child welfare very well. We think it demonstrates inclusiveness of tennis for everyone across the whole community from Tennis Club.
I think the issue is we want to clear is that the two gates at the top and the bottom are on the Mary Bailey Trust land.
Yeah.
They would be left open majority of the time, but closed while juniors are using the community courts for their safety. Maybe just temporarily closed when the competitions on or where coaching is taking place.
So we're kind of looking for approval?
Well, we've discussed it with Chris Stringer and informally, and it's really moving forward to get a view on whether the council will be happy for that to happen or not.
Our plan is to do this as part of the build of the pavilion right now. Is that correct?
Well, I think it'll be after.
Yeah, part of that.
Yeah, we'd like to.
So we've included the cost to do this as part of the pavilion costs in anticipation of going to have floodlight over here. Any questions? Yeah.
Can I ask you, so the gates are not there at the moment, it's just a gate to the back, as I remember that, yeah.
No, they're not there. It's quite separate just now, to tell you the truth. There's a large hedge that runs all the way across on this. There's a small gate exit, you know. We want to open all that up to make it all feel one together. Sure.
Can you just explain the need for the gates? Is that just to have open access to Mary Bailey Field? I don't understand why.
Yes, essentially, this is a thoroughfare here just now, so it's quite a narrow strip, but you can walk from here all the way through to the football, basketball, the mugger.
Yeah.
So it's a very small strip. The need of the gates here is really to ensure when children are using this facility here, they can get access to toilets back and forth quite safely. So there's no child welfare issues there.
Yeah, but I'm just confused about why you need the gates into the small narrow strip.
So there'll be a fence that will run all the way across on both sides.
Yeah, but why do you need a gate out through that fence?
So that gate can be open and people can traverse through there.
They transit through there at the moment.
But they can.
Road through to the mugger, saying.
Oh, I see. There's a gate at Somerset Road end.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's not a gate, it's more like a
You go through a gate too.
That's what it is, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Presumably, at the moment, you've got a gate, so there's the little gap. There's the community tennis courts on the left there, and then on the right, you've got a gate or a hedge or something already with a gate.
We do. That's
So-
where we're going to go.
So if it's open during the day,
Yeah.
and those new gates are open,
Yeah.
I could just wander in any time into the tennis club. Is that the idea?
If they're open during the day, yeah.
Even though I'm not a member or I don't play tennis?
Absolutely,
or-
absolutely.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. What you can't do is you can't access the club courts. They'll be on a gated system. Yeah.
Can I just clarify? So to access the community courts, the only way is through the tennis club, yeah?
No. I should make that clear.
No.
At the other end of these community courts here, at the top, there is the main public access for people who book the courts. So there's a coded gate there, which we pay to maintain. There's the coded gate that people get a code and they enter in and play their tennis game out there.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the access the public would have. If you pay on an annual basis. Yeah.
So can you just clarify what I mean, it's great to have the update and know that the things that you're doing, but obviously giving permission when we haven't had prior warning of what you're up to is tricky. So obviously I don't think it would be easy for us to do that now.
Right.
And I think it's useful maybe to submit that to the planning board maybe, or to another meeting. Maybe you can give us some guidance, Peter.
Yeah, I mean, I think on something like this, we would obviously want to take the advice of Chris Stringer as the environment manager.
Yeah.
First and foremost.
This has been fully discussed with Chris, and Chris basically suggests we should present to the councillors
Sure.
our ideas.
Okay. And certainly, you know, we can see what the senses of this in the room, but obviously we can't take a decision tonight. I mean, we have to bring a formal recommendation back to council or another committee, you know, in order to get a decision taken.
So this is just sort of like getting an update of what's
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, in essence, there's probably no change to what we have just now in terms of access, other than there are 2 gates now rather than just open this stretch. Yeah.
I'm not clear what the decision would be. What would you be asking us to decide on?
Well, the land where we would erect the gates and the fence is obviously in trust of the council.
Right, okay, got you.
So this fence here would be new, and this fence here at the top would be new as well.
Okay.
We'll just cut across, put 2 gates in, open it up, free access. But we need those to close that. Again, I'll re-emphasize child welfare. Currently, it's not an optimum situation we have right now. So we want to improve that, particularly with the new pavilion, kids are walking back and forth in the facilities there. Yeah.
Is the plan to keep the existing gate active as well?
Yes, indeed, it is. It is. Yeah. Wasn't expecting any questions. Just finished work at 6:30. Good job. I'm just doing what more here.
As the council, we are the trustees of the Mary Bailey
Yes.
Lane, is that
Yeah.
correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
So can the council agree to put those gates on the Mary Bailey land, or with the Mary Bailey, will have to be a meeting of the trustees of the Mary Bailey?
It needs to be a meeting of the trustees.
Right, so it can't come to a council meeting as such, it has to come to
I mean,
We are.
we are the trust, yeah, I just.
one and open the other.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, that's what, I think that's what I'm getting at, yeah.
Well, I think the starting point really is that we must get some formal advice from Chris.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Proposal, and we go from there.
One more question.
Yeah, no, yeah.
How many children need to use the community courts
Right, okay.
rather than your own courts?
Right, okay, so this is quite a chapter. So this is interesting, it changes through the years, the truth. Tennis coaching has been seasonal, I think to be fair to say. However, we're seeing a much bigger uptake again this year in the autumn winter season as well. And for that reason, we need more access to these courts here during the coaching period, because we've got lots of other league matches going on over in the main club courts, if you want to call them, as well. So the usage has gone up quite considerably, both us as a club, our membership has increased. I'm happy, I'm getting more revenue, that's good, I'm able to maintain the coach better, that's a positive thing. But I'm able to use that funding as well to maintain the community coach too. However, that then pushes capacity out to the community coach at the same time, just because of the numbers. So it's through the year scenario, more in the summer, but we're seeing more coming into the autumn period as well. Hence the need for this linkage with the floodlight at the same time. That answer your question again?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we wouldn't want to go to the trouble of putting in those gates if there was sufficient capacity for all of the children to use your own courts, because there wouldn't be a safety issue there.
Absolutely, and what we've tended to find is on the weekends we're using these courts, the club courts, for coaching of children in the mornings on the weekend, freeing up these courts here for Joe Public who wants to play tennis. That's starting on a Sunday morning.
Thank
you. Okay. Yeah.
I'm kind of conscious we probably need to move on, but I think really interesting. I think you should be congratulated. Sorry, I'm Nick Dove. I'm the market board councillor.
Okay.
So I don't play tennis actually, but I know.
Well, there's always room for new people. Just pay money, you can come and play.
I think it should be acknowledged that you've had a really great increase. It's not obviously it's right the way through the year, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
People playing tennis and all that town.
Yeah.
I think when we come to talk about potentially financial contributions, it'd be handy to know a bit about the breakdown of that increase. What sort of people are using it, how inclusive, how accessible is it for others?
Yeah.
That's another meeting.
Yeah. We can actually draw data on the usage of the courts different times of the year as well. I'm going to be sort of, probably not the tape test, we've got to be careful and the GDRP rules, if we can share there, but I'll tell you, there's certainly a very big uptake in tennis in this town, very big uptake. Are we all done? That's it.
Yeah.
Congratulations, you know, for having ideas and
Yeah.
keeping going, you know. Well done.
It's kept us very busy. Thanks.
Yeah, so we should down.
Yeah, yeah.
Nick's reminded me, when we ask a question or say something, can we please state our names and our titles if we have one. Okay, thanks very much for that. Okay, so we are doing apologies for absence now, which I'm passing over to Peter.
Okay, we have apologies from Sarah, Lizzie, John and Ali. And reasons for absence have been received and my advice is to accept them.
Okay.
So over to you.
Okay, just a little read. Okay, so I'm going to propose that we accept these apologies from the councillors. I need a proposer for that one. Richard, seconder Scott. All those in favour?
That's unanimous.
Are there any declarations of interest tonight? Andy Palmer.
Thanks. I'm just going to declare an interest on the basis that I've been asked by the Chamber of Commerce to read out a statement in relation to agenda item 5 in 5G. Declaration of interest is that although I'm not a director of the limited company, I do sit on the committee as an observer, as a representative from Town Council, and also the two businesses that I have controlling share holdings in are both members of the Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you. Anyone else? That's good. Okay. I'm going to go on to the approval of the minutes from the last meeting. I need a proposer for that. Mark Dorrington, seconder Anne Hills. All those in favour? Okay. Can everyone hear me? Can you hear me at the back?
That's unanimous.
I'll sign those in a minute. Okay, so we're on item 4, which is questions and comments from the public. Any questions regarding 5G will be taken in item 5. I have a statement here from Avon and Somerset Police, just policing summary about some antisocial behaviour that people have been concerned about recently. So they couldn't be with us tonight, so they sent this statement. Following continued calls of antisocial behaviour, drug use and crimes within Victoria Park on October the 16th, members of Frome Town team spent the afternoon at the park with the drugs bus. The bus was very well received and it was great to educate an array of people about many issues that have been reported. If you witness any incidents, please call 999 or 101. We are pleased to report a reduction of reports of antisocial behaviour and street drinking in the town centre. We continue to patrol this area and will continue to report breaches of Mendip District Council's public space protection order. And then in brackets it says PSPO. The bike register deters cycle thieves and reunites stolen bikes with their owners. Bike register works in partnership with all UK forces, including Avon and Somerset. Frome neighbourhood policing team have been able to contact numerous events around the town. To find out about future events, visit Avon and Somerset Police website at avonandsomerset.police.co.uk. And if you would like the full copy of this report, you can let Laura know. But yeah, that is a statement from Somerset and Avon Police. So you're all in the loop. So what's next? Councillors' questions, isn't it? You got any questions from Hi, Anita.
Anita Collier, Town Councillor. As a community speed watch operative, I'm very conscious of the fact that we at Frome Town Council actually hold what they call a SID, which is a speed indicator device. And I know from experience that we've actually tried to put pressure on Somerset County Council for their help in giving us various places where we could site this safely. And they've been very unforthcoming. It recently came to my attention that Ashley Ray, who looks after the community speed watch people, said he would take it up on our behalf. He's done that, but also had no reply, and is therefore requesting that all we Frome community speed watch operatives bring this to the council to try and get more pressure applied to Somerset County Council to really see if we can push hard to get some help in getting this speed indicator device erected, because I think it really will make a massive difference. So it's just a formal request that we do that, please.
Any others? Any more? Richard?
Yeah, I'm just going to read my little bunch out here. I've got a question or possibly a proposal. In the light of the recent tragic felling of a 275-year-old oak tree on the Sandys Hill Lane area south of Frome, I would ask that Frome Town Council urge Mendip District Council to put more resources into the preservation and protection of mature trees across the region, in particular to ensure that on any sites that are given planning permission for development, to ensure that there is a rigorous and proactive issuing and enforcement of tree preservation orders on any mature trees before planning permission is granted. Given the current concerns raised at COP26 about deforestation, the paramount aim should be to stop unnecessary felling of ancient trees in future. I'd like to propose that we write a letter as Frome Town Council to that effect. It's not to blame any one person. There's been quite a vigorous email chain going backwards and forwards with a few councillors and officials about this. So I'm not trying to blame anybody. The truth is, a really old oak tree was felled for no reason. It was perfectly healthy. It failed to get a tree preservation order, although it was surveyed a few years ago and highlighted as being in need of a tree preservation order. None was forthcoming. The plans went through. None of us spotted the deliberate error that a tree was going to be lost. So, and this has happened on a couple of occasions before, to my knowledge. So I would really urge this council to make a statement to urge Mendip District Council to put more resources into enforcement of tree preservation in future. It's not fair to put it all down to one person, which is all it is at the moment. So that's my sort of ask.
We can get a letter drafted, brilliant, or those with John, to make sure that we can get them off if councillors.
I think, thank you. And in particular with, Selwood Garden Community, Sandys Hill Lane, Little Keyford, all these developments which are coming, there's going to be a huge number of houses if they all get permission. That's a huge number of mature trees that could be felled for absolutely no good reason. So, and there are definitely others on that site at the moment which are unprotected.
Peter, is this something that we can raise at the next meeting with Ros White?
Definitely. I mean, we can take this up with the leader of Mendip District Council, with whom we have a regular contact. So that's one avenue that we could pursue.
Andy, you've got Helen Kay on the Zoom if you want to make her.
Cool. Shall we? We've got Helen Kay asking a question on Zoom.
Helen, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, all I wanted to say was that, yes, please do that. There is a parallel move in the council where a group of us have been trying to get an extra person. I've been trying for 18 months to get an extra person to help the one existing officer who is struggling to keep up with all the work he's been asked to do routinely through planning applications. I'm trying to get what I'm calling a tree VIP, which is Trees Vision and Implementation Plan, which has 3 parts to it. The first part is to protect the trees we've got, individual trees and also copses of trees, because we've lost some down at Titherington and also on the lane with no name quite recently. Also to change planning policies so that we're planting more fruit trees, and when trees have to come out, well, we resist trees coming out in the first place, but when they do, we replant with more. And finally, for the tree planting scheme, at the moment it's a bit random where they go. So we need to have a mapping exercise where we decide exactly where the trees are going to go. So that's the sort of three-pronged approach. I am struggling. I've been trying different ways of doing it. First of all, through an ecology and landscape officer, and then secondly through just trying to get the plan up and running. So then that implies that we need a resource to sort of coordinate the tree vision and implementation plan. So if you go on a separate track to speak to Ros Wyke, that would be really helpful. And to say that you are aware that there are some moves to do this. We're also now in the system, if you like. A paper went to scrutiny committee recently with this outline of a plan, and it has to go to cabinet. But I'm trying to get it to cabinet before January. But it seems as if we might have to wait from till even January, February, at which point the council will be pulling back and will not want to employ a second person. So that will be nearly 2 years after I first raised the issue. So if you can fast track this and put some pressure on, I would be really, really grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. I know you're one of the most proactive district councillors on this, so thank you for your efforts. Brilliant.
Thank you, Helen. Sheila, did you have some?
I just didn't want us to lose Anita's point and wondered who was actually going to. Did you want a letter or something written, Anita?
Well, yes, I guess really the thing was that, you know, at the last meeting we all had, it looked as though Ashley Ray was going to pick it up for us. We've been talking about it, but it looks as though the baton's come back in our hands now. So it's really up to us just to put pressure on Somerset Highways, whether that's done in a phone call or a letter or some other way. I'm not sure what the best approach would be.
Yeah, I mean, we can move.
Thank you, Sheila.
On this one in parallel. You know, we can, as officers, we can urge officers at the county council to apply some pressure. Equally, this is a matter that could be taken up with the county councils. You know, for them to apply some pressure on their officers to try and get a response to us. You know, may I suggest that's something that comes from the council to the county councils, you know, to try and get to take it up.
So you're suggesting if Andy talks to the person within Somerset Highways?
No, that's something that I can do. So I can pick it up at the officer level, and the suggestion is that the leader of the council, Andy, picks it up with the county councils, you know, to apply some pressure at the political level.
Thank you.
Thanks for picking that up, Sheila. My fault, I missed that. Sorry.
We've had another comment from Adam Boyden, who is also a district councillor, who's asked if FTC could support MDC with additional tree advice within and around Frome at all.
I'm sure that we can manage that with Chris Stringer's expertise.
Like something going forward, I forgot to add with the unitary, you know, delegated powers in future for Frome Town Council to impose its own tree preservation orders where it sees fit would be useful.
Speak to Chris Stringer. I did see a hand up over here earlier. I don't want to miss you out.
I just mention that somebody told me there's not any money, there's a trees cut down for purposes of telecommunications. I just wanted to flag that since we're going on to talk about actually.
Okay, thank you. Do you say in Nunny? Have we made a note of that? Cool, yeah. Made a note of that, thank you. Anything else from anyone else? No, okay. Okay, so now we're on item 5, which is 5G. I'm going to pass over to Jane to start.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Cheers.
Thank you.
Can I just check that you can all hear me okay?
I wasn't that, wasn't it?
Quite easy otherwise to go from.
Right, thank you. So earlier this month, the Town Council was consulted by Mendip District Council on a planning application for a replacement telecoms mast to support 5G. The application was considered by the planning committee, who didn't object to the proposals, but we were unable to support the application as the committee were bound by the existing 5G policy agreed in 2019. The current policy is that Frome Town Council has a moral responsibility to protect public health and the local environment. Until there is more independent scientific consensus that 5G wireless radiation is harmless to humans and the environment, Frome Town Council adopts a precautionary principle and will not endorse the rollout of 5G. As a result of this, the Planning Committee recommended that Council reconsiders its position on 5G. In August 2020, the government published a guide on 5G mobile technology. The guide deals with the issue of health concerns about 5G technology and includes the finding from Public Health England, who are the government advisors that take the lead on public health matters associated with electromagnetic fields or radio waves. In relation to 5G, Public Health England have said the overall exposure is expected to remain low relative to guidelines, and as such, there should be no consequences for public health. My report contains a link to the full guide, so hopefully you've all had the opportunity to read it. As well as publishing the guide, government has also written to all county, district and unitary council chief executives, advising them that local authorities have an essential role to play by supporting investment in digital communications infrastructure, by ensuring that they have policies and procedures in place that promote effective engagement with the digital communication industry and minimise barriers to deployment. This is further supported by Section 5 of the National Planning Policy Framework, which sets out the government's general overview regarding the support of high-quality communications infrastructure, recognising that advanced high-quality communications infrastructure is essential for economic growth. We do, however, know that there is part of the community which strongly disagrees with government and its advisors and maintains that there are serious risks to health from 5G. And as you know, Frome Town Council has no power to permit or halt the rollout of 5G. It is a statutory consultation in all planning applications. Since Council last discussed 5G in 2019, government guidance is much stronger in favour of 5G and is clearly based on the advice from Public Health England. In addition, Mendip District Council is highly unlikely to object to 5G applications on health grounds. It is recommended that Frome Town Council follow government guidance and support future planning applications for 5G masts, notwithstanding concerns around siting and design. Hopefully we have the recommendation on screen. And that is a recommendation of the councillors.
Thank you for that. Okay, we'll take some questions and comments from the public and councillors. I know there's a few of you here that are here for the 5G debate. Do you have a spokesperson amongst you?
There's three of us that would like to talk through the issue.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Cool. Can I ask that we don't repeat any points as well, just so we can keep things moving along?
Just ask, perhaps I'm a bit old and slow, but I didn't actually follow what you said. Would you mind kindly repeating Public Health England's recommendation to local authorities? I don't know whether that's a directive, a statutory instrument, or what. Can you please explain exactly what it is? So the statement comes from the guide that has been issued by government. A statement, thank you. And the statement says that the Public Health England's view is that the overall exposure is expected to remain low relative to guidelines, and as such, there should be no consequences for public health. Thank you so much.
Okay, so so three of you have things prepared, so it makes sense to.
Can I come up and speak?
Yeah, why not? Why not? Yeah. Sweep directly to the top of it, otherwise it won't be captioned. Okay.
Just getting.
Okay, no worries. Take your time.
Hello. My name is Karen Churchill. 2 years ago, I invited Anita to come over to the corner house where we gave a presentation, half an hour presentation about all the issues related to 5G. And overall, we're really thankful when Frome voted for the precautionary principle on the basis of the whole picture of the situation as it stood. Since then, I've continued to investigate this subject and been involved with about 60 different WASP applications in Bristol and Bath. I've become a plaintiff on a legal case against the government, taking that from Bob and other departments with Michael Mansfield. We're challenging the failure of the government to properly risk assess. When we presented the petition to Anita and to everybody back then, there was ample evidence to show that the ICNET guidelines were inadequate to protect public safety. And since my work in the last 2 years, I've become even more convinced that there's an absolute utter disregard of due process in processing centrally and in planning. And what I'm going to share with you tonight is to show how the consequences of those failures for a large section of the population. We have 2.5 million people with electrosensitivity in this country. 400,000 people do not have access to work or education because of this sensitivity. This is only going to increase as the exposures and 5G rolls out, it increases. I've got quite a lot to say, so do bear with me. Obviously, when we had the precautionary principle voted for, we were warned that actually as Frome Town Council and as planners, because of this strong directive that Ms. Llewellyn has just described to us, there is a very strong directive. You cannot set health standards other than ICNET. You cannot question the need. So everybody believes that actually you can't do that. Well, we have, and we did. And in Brighton 2 weeks ago, we received a concession order and Brighton had to pay £13,000 because they have not assessed the health impacts of the mast. So it's taken 2 years to get to this point, which has been a progression, which I'd like to describe to you how this has happened. The information that we brought to Frome 2 years ago, we went on and we took it to Somerset scrutiny, we took it to Devon scrutiny, and Devon agreed that there was assurances and proof was needed that this technology is safe. Nothing has come back from the government about that. We also took a petition to Downing Street saying, please, can you look at this information? And nothing's come back from that. We went to solicitors after feeling like we were knocking on closed doors. And this was in late 2019. And they came back to us and said, for liability purposes, councils are liable and decision makers have to decide how much weight to put on the guidelines and how much weight to put on other evidence. This is from the PhD solicitors themselves. So we thought, right, okay, we'll take our evidence to the planners during last applications and we shall ask for the evidence to be weighed up. However, paragraph 118 says you cannot set health safeguards other than ICNET. So immediately you've got a contradiction. Behind the scenes, you've got the requirement to weigh up evidence, and for liability, they are liable for the decision they make. And on the other hand, you're being told that you can't do that, and all of this pressure coming down from government to toe the line. So what we then did was to team up with Michael Mansfield. We've spent a long time looking at the evidence, gathering in professional scientific reports from both industry-funded reports and from independent reports. He became absolutely
crystal clear that the government are not doing risk assessment. This expected not to exceed guidelines is totally ridiculous. There's absolutely no reports on measuring how this is going to be maintained with the extent of the exposure. So there was no justification, no accountability for the challenge. When we did our letters before action to government, nothing is coming back. So the next stage in operation was to see, well, how are people getting on out there in the fields with this exposure? And a lady came to our attention who lives in an address in Chiswick. She was very sick. She has burn marks on her face. She has wobbly legs. I'm typing right now. And she has tight bands across her head, nausea, etc. And she was really keen for her experience to be heard in court. So our solicitor and her assistant goes to her house. She's there 2 hours. And if I can show you what happens within 2 hours, they have reddening of the skin. They too feel sick and nauseous, brain fog, can't think, wobbly legs, feeling just absolutely awful. Now they go home, and this sudden acute symptoms take quite a long time to subside. And now both of them are chronically sensitive to electromagnetic radiation. One lady, she's got 4 children. She had to spend several months in the shed at the bottom of her garden away from exposure in order to recover. She's had to retire as her barrister's assistant. She's a gardener now because she cannot tolerate any exposure. Lorna, our main solicitor barrister, she too has got ongoing symptoms. She was a fit barrister of 20 years who worked out in the gym, so crystal clear mind, had never had any illness before this situation, and now she gets headaches. She gets too much exposure and she just can't function. And she has a headache every single day in her office because she's got a mast outside her office. Now this isn't tinfoil hat, this isn't conspiracy, this is fact, and this is not uncommon. I've met several other people in the same situation where you have this sudden burst or sudden overload, and then you have chronic symptoms. Other people just have chronic symptoms without this definite start in the situation. So yes, so they are both left disabled from this situation. It's rather ironic. You take a case and end up living the case herself. So yeah, so off we go to court, and instead of this
point of order.
being
Point of order. I appreciate it's a very emotive subject, but lady's been talking for nearly 10 minutes. I appreciate you've got other speakers as well.
Can I rush through what's been going on locally, because it's very important, because the failures that are not being heard centrally. We've got other failures going on locally, which are very important. We've got a mast in our hall on a playing field. We have the leader of the council there talking about health effects, talking about exclusion zones, and talking about how we need to know where those exclusion zones are so that we know that the children are safe. He talks about that, and everyone agrees, yeah, it should be a good idea. They were absolutely slammed in the papers in the Guardian for even mentioning health, and since then they backed off. But in the next last application, we were given exclusion zones, and a man's house was inside a zone marked for 8 hours. I want to show you that picture. Here, the blue house is inside the exclusion zone, marked for 8 hours, okay? Because of the pressure on councils to not consider health, what can they do? They went to visit the site, agreed it was inside the zone, and then they changed the drawings and said, okay, it's only going to be turned on for 4G initially. Okay, but the plan was still justified on 5G, and it's still going to be turned up for 5G at some point. That man built that house with his own hands, and one of the recommendations from the council was, why doesn't he move? Well, what about the person moving into that house? And why have the zones and create these zones if they're not going to be applied and overseen? And this is one of my main issues, is that there isn't the oversight even at the agreed levels. And this is one example of how, and this man he's got sleep problems,
His parents lived next door. They both died of cancer. He was nursing his father of cancer at the time that this application was going on. He himself did not have a problem with the guidelines. His issue was that they weren't being overseen. It was only when we explained to him and showed him the research, a bundle of research this high, that there is in fact a link between RFR and cancer and sleep problems. So he was in a position, he now knew that he was going to be exposed to even more, and he was in this position of poor health anyway. So then what we did was, okay, Bath says, not up to us, we go to Ofcom. What does Ofcom say? Oh, we're going to come and measure after the mast has gone up. How is that going to help him? And how is that actually using the regulation and protection of public health, even at these levels? So he was left in a very difficult position. I just want to talk about the adequacy of the guidelines. The US courts have now ruled that they are not, the non-thermal effects have to be assessed. In August this year, that was a ruling. 200 people's sensitivity, it was ruled that their testimony has to be taken into account. So this is the progression that is happening. We're not moving towards it being safe, we're moving it towards being unsafe. And estimations of, oh, we don't think it's going to exceed the guidelines is not good enough. So, yes, in Bristol, we've had 54 masks refused on siting grounds. In every single case, the health concerns are raised. In Mallow Road, we've got 200 objections to this mast in Mallow Road. There is not one comment of approval for this mast. There's not one person comment of support for Mallow Road. People are worried. People on the street are very worried, and they have reason to be worried because they are experiencing symptoms from radiation. Other countries are more on top of this. Cyprus are doing adverts on the back of buses to warn parents about the exposure. ICNIRP do not protect children in the same way. They say we can't build it into our guidelines because we haven't got the data. They know that they're more susceptible at certain times of their development. Okay, which leads me on to Brighton. So we get to Brighton and they have a mask by the school, and we've just won a court case there. I'd like Frome to uphold. Yes, just want to show the burns that happened to the lady in Brighton, in London rather. So my request is not only do we uphold the precautionary principle, my request is that we actually get together and work out how we resolve this contradiction of government passing the responsibility to the planners and planners passing it back. The EEC European Code was brought into law in 2020. In there, it says that public health should be made an imperative and latest science should be taken into account and precautions should be taken into account. So I would like Frome Town Council to help us start to resolve these issues. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. So this is democracy. I respect it. I respect your right to speak and voice your opinions. But if we can keep this
don't worry.
to the point,
It's not as long, but it's equally important.
Please introduce yourself.
My name's Amy.
Right to the top.
My name's Amy.
There you
Is
go.
that okay? Ooh. Right, so start warnings are emerging on the environmental side of the 5G rollout, but are being totally ignored by the mainstream. In fact, the official line, as shown earlier with this line, is that the government and telecoms are promoting 5G and the Internet of Things as a means to combat climate change. This is a ridiculous claim by the industry, prompting legal firm Client Earth to call out the telecoms and Big Corp for greenwashing. It's the efficiency paradox. If you claim efficiency, everyone will buy into it, making it as mass-produced and as ineffective as the thing it was brought in to replace. One of the main things being hailed as a way of reducing your personal carbon footprint is to limit flying. I don't know how many people here feel a sense of guilt when they fly or they offset their carbon emissions through a carbon offsetting company. But the global aviation industry is responsible for making up 2.5% of the global greenhouse gases. However, it's not being acknowledged that by buying a new mobile phone and smart devices, you're playing into a system that will actually be responsible for consuming 10 times this within the next 4 years. This is a prediction coming directly from within the industry itself, Dr. Andre of Huawei, so we could assume that it's a modest figure. For comparison, the current figure now is actually 11%. So you can see the huge jump, 11% to just over 20% that the 5G rollout within the next 4 years would be responsible for. And the reason why it's going to increase the electricity is the higher data transmission. So the fact that devices will need to charge more often to deal with higher data transfers, and each 5G mast will require around 3 times more power than the current 4G masts. Another important point to talk about is it's not a replacement of the existing 4G system, it is an addition. So for example, it is expected that around 100,000 satellites will need to be deployed globally. Each satellite has a lifespan of only 5 years, so clearly it's not a sustainable technology. The non-working satellites in space are condemned to a life of space junk, and just for comparison of that 100,000 figure, currently, as of April this year, there's just under 7,400 active satellites in space. Last year, 2020, was the largest amount of single satellites launched in 1 year, which is 1,283. So in effect, by launching 100,000 every 5 years to implement 5G, it's basically a whole new experiment that you can't really go back on. We also need to consider the vast amount of emissions released and involved with the rocket launches to get them into space. Moving on to the production of smart devices, because that requires the mining of earth for precious metals such as lithium, cobalt, tellurium, copper, and manganese. These chemicals are not all safe. For example, lithium is highly flammable, and as such, it's extremely hard to recycle, using up to 6 times more energy than the process of actually extracting it. Which means that the vast majority of discarded devices end up in landfill, where toxic chemicals leach out into the earth. According to a UN report in 2019, 4.7 million tons of small electronics were discarded. Now, everybody here has a mobile phone. If you lift up the mobile phone, how much does that weigh? Not that much. So you have to think 4.7 million tons in 1 year of small devices in landfill. If you include large equipment, laptops, TVs, etc., the annual e-waste would weigh the equivalent of 4,500 Eiffel Towers. There have been no risk assessments which factor in all these elements of the impact of the environment. There are clauses in the European Electronics Communications Code which set out a framework of ongoing environmental risk assessment, but this isn't happening. Councils believe they have no powers to factor in when weighing up material planning considerations of mass proposals. ICNUB are only just looking to add in protection to wildlife in their guideline exposures. To briefly touch on the wildlife, even though there's much more to it than this, the journal Reviews on Environmental Health stated this after referencing over 1,200 studies. The majority of studies have found biological effects at both high and low intensity man-made exposures, many with implications for wildlife health and viability. Anthropogenic EMF may be contributing more than we currently realise to species diminishment and extinction. Exposures continue to escalate without understanding EMF as a potential causative and or cofactorial agent. It is time to recognise ambient EMF as a potential novel stressor to other species, design technology to reduce exposures to as low as reasonably achievable, keep systems wired as much as possible to reduce ambient RFR and create laws accordingly. As we are learning, it's much harder to stop, change or mitigate something when it's in full swing. We cannot rely on government and industry-backed science as the sole voice for the safety of this technology, as it is proving consistently that often contains blatant conflicts of interest to the detriment of our health and the planet. We need to reject this technology until fully independent environmental impact assessments have been carried out and the effects on human, animal, flora and fauna health have been comprehensively studied with no stone left unturned. There is no room for holes in this research because if 5G rolls out as is currently planned, there will be no corner of the earth immune from EMS. Frome should keep the precautionary principle in place. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
briefly.
Well, I've got something to say. I mean, I've written it, so I'll be as quick as I can.
Okay.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name's Joanna Price, and I live and work in Frome. In 2019, I supported the establishment of the precautionary principle with regard to 5G in Frome, and I'm here today to defend it. Once we realised that this 20-metre 5G monopole was being proposed on Manor Road, we started speaking to people, and honestly, most of those people were concerned about the health issues. Since the establishment of this precautionary principle, what have we done to research this issue and gather information and evidence to either support this technology or to discover the dangers of it? Well, fortunately, we have people like Karen, who spent the last 2 years of her life paying very close attention to the emerging studies and evidence we now have readily available to use about the harmful effects of radio frequency radiation on the human body, on wildlife, and our natural environment. And as you heard from what she and Amy have both said here tonight, there is also understanding of how the telecoms industry is being allowed carte blanche without even having to consider the health implications of the technology they are set to carpet the world with and make even more billions and trillions from. I think we all know in our hearts that this is wrong. And I think we know from what Karen has told us that we do have lawful power and we can use the law to protect us. Let me ask you all a question. Do you ever have the feeling that something isn't quite right with the world? Too much stress, not enough time, too many hoops to jump through, too much fear being pumped out at us through our newspapers and mainstream media all the time. That feeling that we're being led into disconnecting more and more from what is simply natural. Who in Frome really wants even faster download speeds and even better reception on their phone and smart everything? Well, judging by all the people I've spoken to in the past couple of weeks, it really is a minority. My unease with the direction in which the system seems to be taking us has led me to look beyond what is fed to us by the mainstream. I mean, do you realise that the two wealthiest, most powerful corporations in the world, BlackRock and Vanguard, now own nearly everything in the world? Really, it's these two mega corporations that dominate every aspect of our lives. That may seem like an exaggeration, but from the breakfast that's on the table in the morning to the mattress we sleep on at night and everything we do, put on or consume in between, all are largely dependent on these corporations, these massive investment companies that manage the major money flows on earth. And what is the goal of corporations? I am on point, don't worry. What is the goal of corporations? It's to make money. It's simply true that their remit is to make money. And sadly, these self-serving money-making machines are not concerned with our well-being. This is capitalism to the max. And what can we do about it? Well, first of all, we need to recognise it. We need to see the monster that's creeping up on us all. We have to stop blindly following and trusting the system we're in and these just things that we're being told to do. We need to actually look at the mounting evidence of harm and see where this smart world is leading us. I believe into even more stress, dis-ease, and control of our lives. It's my strong feeling and awareness that we need for our own safety and the safety of our families and our community and our natural environment to keep this precautionary principle in place and hold off this technology in Frome while we each really study the consequences of literally living in 24 hours a day electro smog.
In the same way that we're learning about the dangers of radio frequency radiation, we're also learning that the natural balance of our bodies and our natural world is far more intricate and fragile than we have known. And if we decide we don't want to live in a fake electro soup, it's up to us individually and collectively on a local level to join with a growing number of other individuals and communities around the world in saying no and continuing to work together to strengthen our awareness of how we do want to live our lives here in Frome and beyond. It starts at the grassroots by each of us seeing the truth and taking responsibility and standing up in our own small way and coming together as the wonderful community we are. Are we going to protect our bodies, our children's bodies, and our beautiful natural environment? Are we going to trust ourselves and nature? Or are we going to let ourselves be taken over by something else? Nearly finished. This is the decision right now on our doorstep, and may I suggest that it is a crucially important one. To finish, I would like to thank you all for listening, Amy for her words, and I would really especially like to thank Karen for the incredible and courageous work she has been doing over the past couple of years on behalf of us all. Hopefully now more of us can see the evidence and listen to that niggling voice inside and get on board, taking individual responsibility and coming together as a community to properly look at this issue. Or more specifically, this evening, the decision to keep the precautionary principle is up to you, our councillors. And from what I can see, it is your responsibility to protect it here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Has anyone else got anything to add? Andy Palmer.
Thank you. I'm just going to read the statement that I've been asked to provide from Frome Chamber of Commerce. It's an interesting one, which I didn't catch your name. Joanna asked a question about who actually wants quicker downloads, better internet connection. So for us having the business community in the town desperately requires it. So the statement from the Chamber of Commerce, the need for good digital connectivity, whether that's the ability to have meetings on Zoom, to cut down travel, to sell online or connect more through social media, has become even more important over the past year. We know there is patchy coverage of good broadband across the town and in our villages, which will be affecting businesses' ability to work properly. So we are supportive of any plans, including 5G provision, that will improve access to decent speeds and improve connectivity.
I just add, the productivity wouldn't be good if you were struggling for income.
Scott. I just got more. This one? Oh, you're there.
Scott Ward, Town Councillor. It's very easy to make this a global problem that we need to look at, and it really is, you know, not just specifically 5G, but the idea of big corporations, you know, destroying the world around us. We're not blind to that. We know that Frome is one of the most progressive towns in the country, and possibly the world, in terms of protecting green spaces. But the reality is that Frome Town Council is only a statutory advisor. We can say the things we want to say, but ultimately we don't get to decide. You know, I've seen green spaces torn up for houses where I live, and it's absolutely heartbreaking. The mass that we have at the moment on Manor Road, no one has come to me as town councillor and said, this person is suffering from the mast. We've had 2 years since 2019 when we took the precautionary stance, and I've done a lot of research, and like any other subject that is divisive, you can find 100 papers to say why it's a good thing, and you can find 100 papers to say why it's a bad thing. So here we are 2 years later down the line, and I'm working in technology and deal with technical support for products that include mobile phones. And yeah, it's disgusting the amount of phones that go to waste. It's disgusting that phone companies are making these phones every year just to make money and destroy natural resources to do so. And it's disgusting that our government does not put proper thought into the things they do, the knock-on effects. I wouldn't trust central government to run a bath in my own country, you know? But we are here to look at this specific aspect, and we as councillors, the town council, have to work within a system that, yeah, most of the system is broken, but we can't change that. We can only work on what we have, and I think the idea that concerns around siting and design, I would hate to see trees torn down for relay points for 5G. I would be strongly against that. And in fact, I've forgotten the name of the second lady that spoke. The information you gave about the impact on ecology and wildlife is very interesting, and something that I'll go and look at. But I'm still no further down the line 2 years, and I still can't pick a side either way. I've not seen definitive proof because there is so much conflicting reports, evidence.
Can I answer that?
Yeah, and I can imagine it's going to be a case of you could say to them, you could roll off a dozen specialists who have given reports.
I'm saying that there's 2.5 million electrosensitives from a government study. There's 400,000 people that don't have access to work. I'm showing you a picture of one of 7 people that are burnt in an interference zone in London, where there is lower than the guidelines. What more proof do you want that there is a problem here?
There's never going to be definitive proof, because
if you take that picture as a whole, how can you dismiss that?
I'm not dismissing it. I'm just saying I'm still no further down the line 2 years later to say yes or no first on a personal level.
But what's happening is people aren't being allowed to make connections. Like the man in Radstock, 3 people in a house all on medication because they can't sleep. They're 35 metres from 4G mast. He wasn't allowed to make
Point of order, sorry.
Okay, you've had your say.
Yeah, I just feel it's really important that we actually answer what we're actually saying here.
There are others that wish to speak, and you've had ample time. Who's next? Mark Dorrington, and then yourself, sir.
Thanks very much, Mark Dorrington, Town Councillor. Cast your mind back to July 2019. I was sitting where Andy's sitting now, and I chaired the first meeting as chair of this council. It was pretty chaotic. I lost the plot, and we came up with this fairly bland precautionary recommendation. We thrashed out a compromise. In that time, things have moved on. We've had COVID, we've had 5G being made for COVID in some places, not by yourselves who have empirical evidence, but by people on the fringe of the argument. What I think, what you must understand is, I appreciate the work you've done with Brighton and the other, and the Bristol authorities. You've been talking to planning authorities, people who can actually make a decision. Here, as Scott has said, we are a consultee. We have no power to do anything about this whatsoever. We can, no, hang on. We can go and stand outside Mendip District Council and scream and shout saying, don't build 5G. You'll have as much authority as you do. We can't do anything about that. What we can do is look at each one that comes in on planning grounds, and if it means cutting down trees to build a mast, then I would be dead against that. Let's not do that. But I think you need to be bringing this argument to Mendip or the other planning authorities that you deal with in the area, and not blame us for not pushing it forward, really. We have tried to do that. Nothing's happened in 2 years. You can see how the advice is going from central government down to local government. It will go through. So whatever we say, we can object at every planning meeting we have, and we have done. and it will still go through. So those are the people we need to be tackling, not the people here. Hopefully in unitary, we will have the planning decisions and you can come back and talk to us about it then. But in the meantime, many of other people you should be speaking to.
I hear what you're saying, and also one way of applying this proportion is to individually project mass on site grounds. That was one way of applying proportion and making. We've done that. 54 mass stops in Bristol.
And you've done that because Bristol were actually the decision-making authority. You can come to us and complain about every site in Frome, and we can do nothing about it.
Yes.
As it stands at the moment. And so, and I am minded to think that I've been approached by businesses in the town saying we need to have better connectivity. The Wi-Fi, especially in the centre of town, is absolutely appalling, and people do need to carry on their businesses. If this helps businesses, then we may have to allow some of it to go through.
Fibre optic is a better solution.
I get that, but I'm not talking about that tonight. I can't do
it's
that.
an alternative, isn't it? If you didn't have 5G, you could have this, it would be the same.
Yeah, so we need to, what we're talking about is the 5G tonight, and whether or not we should come away from this precautionary principle that we agreed at that meeting in 2019 that I chaired. So I don't think we're your enemy. I think maybe we need to be speaking to.
Can I just make a point that I fully understand that Mendip is, we have our sites on Mendip, Karen's been to meetings with Mendip. However, within the community that we are, people look up to Frome Town Council, and if you have an opinion, it encourages other people to take it seriously and take that issue, and then they can object to the mast too, because this has to happen on a ground level. Like you said, central government are going to bulldoze this through no matter what. This has to be a ground movement. So if on a local level, even though you feel like maybe you cannot make the decision yourself, and if you keep the precautionary principle, it's going to do nothing anyway, that might inspire that one extra person, that couple of extra person in that town to actually research it and make a stand themselves. And this is how it spreads, and this is how we look after our environment.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. To the gentleman at the back, thank you. Please, there are others that wish to speak to this. Try and keep to the point.
My name is Derek Tester. I'm retired. I used to be a Procter & Gamble manager, and some of my responsibilities was health and safety. So in 2017, I conducted a risk assessment of this technology. Now, the key point here is a risk assessment is required. This is required by at least 3 statutory acts: Health and Safety at Work, Management of Health and Safety at Work Regulations, and Control of Electromagnetic Frequencies at Work. All 3 statutory acts require a risk assessment or a risk analysis. Now, I've never seen a risk analysis or a risk assessment for any of this technology. So someone is legally responsible for producing a risk analysis. Now, that may be the council, that may be the telecoms, that may be the Chamber of Commerce, but somebody is responsible, legally responsible for producing a risk analysis. This is not really optional, this is required by law. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob.
Can I just clarify, if we actually reject this proposal, then the existing policy that you passed in 2019 just continues to stand. Is that correct?
As I understand it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I'd just like to register my support for rejecting this proposal. Thank you.
Anita?
Yeah, I just feel duty bound almost to come back on this purely because I was at one of the original meetings that you brought this to our attention. And I had a sympathy with your point and was very happy to come back and talk to council about the possibility of creating this document that we arranged to produce. I have to say, I need to be very honest about this, but because of all the developments that have gone on, I really do still sympathise with a lot of your argument. But I have to say there is also a phenomenal argument for the businesses in this town to have greater access to bigger and better technology in order for their businesses to not only survive, but to thrive. And so my feeling has almost changed to the degree where initially where we said we would support anything that didn't have enough information behind it. But I think, as Scott mentioned, there is so much now out in the marketplace that's evidence for and evidence again. It's really hard for the likes of us as a council to be able to pick and choose between that and to know where to land. It's really hard. But as a councillor, yes, I agree, our responsibility is very much about personal health, but we have an equal responsibility to our businesses in the town to make sure that they are in a position to hold Frome together, to keep us going, to keep the economy going within the town, in order that we survive as a prosperous town. And that's part and parcel. So we have really difficult arguments to consider, but my feeling is now, because we've gone through COVID, taking our advice from government guidelines, I think now with the Public Health Authority prepared to say that they don't see any reason not to support it, it almost feels as though we belong to government, we follow government guidelines so far. If this is what they're saying now, not to reject their planning applications, we can still have our objections for all sorts of other reasons. But I am inclined now to lean towards moving towards supporting business as the upper echelon.
The thing is, we're led to believe that 5G is the only solution to achieve better connectivity. It's not.
No, but this is what we're talking about tonight, isn't it? And it's at the moment, this is what's on the table.
Other ways. I'm answering.
I know you can't keep interrupting. You have to go.
Sorry, Chair, I should have asked him first.
Okay, we have to move on. Rich, to say something, and we'll move to Sheila, and then we're done with this.
I've listened, and I think if I could give you some tips, you need to hone down your argument, because you can't solve all of the world's problems in a presentation. You'll get 3 minutes amended. That's it. They'll ring the bell and you'll sit down, and they won't allow you to say what and answer questions like now. So you need to do that. It's interesting, you know, I've done a little trawl. The World Health Organization can't say that it's dangerous. Public Health England don't seem to think it's dangerous. The German organisation, I forget the name, that deal with this sort of thing, have said they think it's safe. Of course, you never know for sure, do you? You never really know for sure. But given that, what we're being asked to do tonight is to make a recommendation about the siting of 5G, a mast which is already there. It's going to be a little bit higher, and it may support 5G in future. This recommendation, to my mind, gives us a get out. It keeps us precautionary, because we're going to have concerns about every future location, about the siting and the design in future. So we'll take it one by one, case by case. And I think that is a precautionary principle, bearing in mind that none of us in this room are technical experts about this stuff. You know, nobody, probably not even the people who are developing it, know absolutely everything that could go wrong with it. But I don't believe that the people who are developing this want their children to feel ill either. So I do think that, and it's already out there, it's in thousands of locations and millions of locations probably. The reality is it's here to stay. This is not the right place to kind of say yes or no to 5G. This is the right place to talk about whether that mast on Marston Road is the right place to put it. In my opinion, there's already a mast there. If we believe in the safety organisations, the independent safety organisations of the country, we should go along with that, because I don't have the expertise to question their expertise. If they're saying it's not dangerous, then I'll go along with that for now. I think it was right to do what we did a couple of years ago, but I think times have moved on. So I would like to bring the conversation back to this recommendation so that we can move on. But thank you for your time, and I did listen, and I kind of take it on board what you're saying.
Thank you, Rich. Sheila?
I absolutely agree with what Rich has just said, and I just wanted to say that I think it is worth us considering trying to persuade more fibre optics, what you're saying. The fibre optics seems to me the way to go, and there's a lot of planning applications coming through. Is there not some way that we can actually really, I mean, we have so little power in that sort of respect, But if we can actually say that we believe that fibre optics is a better solution than any masts and developments like that, I think we should do that. But I think you do. It is exactly what Rich said, that we can actually take each mast application as it comes, and we are not saying yes to every single one. We're certainly saying that we've got concerns, but we can't stop them.
One more view, Stephen, and I'm...
Yeah, it's actually just a question for Jane, actually. Jane, is it right that any application for a mast will come to us at planning?
If it's for the 5G ones, which are taller,
yeah,
then yes, they will.
So we will see them at planning?
We will see them, yeah, because
Thank
they
you.
don't fall within the permitted development standards.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. Thank you, Jenny.
Right, I'm not taking any more debates or questions on this now, given that we have such little power over this. I think we've heard enough, and thank you for your time and the effort that you've put in. So yeah, Andy. Okay, proposing. Seconding. I think Doug. All in favour?
It's a majority.
Okay, so we're now on item 6, which is presentation on events from Rachel. Over to you.
Lovely. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Lovely. Okay. All right. So I always start event conversations with talking about why they're important, part of our communication and marketing strategy, and why we want to be doing them within the council. They enable us to engage with the community in interesting and varied ways, and they're a valuable outreach tool for increased participation. Many of our town events have huge cultural and community value, and they bring people together for shared experience. They also provide keystone of our visitor offer. They're also an excellent way to engage with the community, share information, and reputationally, of course, they ensure that we are not the faceless council, but that we're accessible and that we're a rich part of. I'll just wait a minute. Right, okay. I'll keep going now. So reputationally, as I was saying, we're not faceless. Also, events basically make people happy, as Glow in the Park has shown, which is fantastic. As a team, FDC have delivered and supported a lot of events since April. Many of these have been about 58, ranging from small scale seminar style events all the way through to large scale events. All require getting the targeted audience to them, all require bums on seats, and that obviously means we have to work our magic. And then we're also at lots of events that we don't actually organise, and we attend and support, such as People's Budget events, Gen Z Festival, Carnival Club Fun Day. They're fun not just for everybody, but also for us, but give opportunities across the board to reach our strategic objectives. The amount of cross-team objectives that are met really shouldn't be underestimated if we can frame a really well-planned event. 2 examples, Picnic in the Meadow and National Play Day. I've lumped them together because the objectives were really similar. Obviously, there were 2 really different fun events, but they allowed our community to enjoy our parks and open spaces, come together with a sense of community. They provided a platform for the play strategy work through the Children's Scrap Store. There were meaningful engagement opportunities for our resilience work with the Green and Healthy Futures team and CSE that meant meaningful connections and conversations. And there were also opportunities for our officers to discuss other elements of our work too, such as tree projects, neighbourhood networks were there, Find Family Information Network Directory Service. Of course, inevitably, that means an enormous amount of staff input required in order to develop them, to ensure that they're well planned, but also to ensure that they're staffed and that do meet these strategic objectives. We have supported a lot of events, obviously, over the last 6 months. Picnic in the Meadow, Play Day, Great Big Green Week, which is over 40 events. Luckily, not all hours, but certainly collated and sold by us, if you like, if you want to call it selling. And it did also include 3 large FTC events, and of course, most recently, Glow in the Park. Now, I think one of the reasons I've been asked to sit here is because it has been a question that I was asked almost the very next day, or can we do that at Christmas, or can we do that at... So one of the reasons for coming here and talking about events is just to let you know how much time and staff commitment and capacity it takes to organise these things. So just to give... that's all right, that's all right. Just to give some idea, Glow in the Park event would because it's a large event that we've not done before, takes on average about 60 days, 60 staff days to average. Now, obviously that's not end to end, but there are lots of different things. And then you have your staff delivery on the day. So it's just to make you aware of where we are. So we're up to 90 days really for Glow in the Park in terms of the amount of people who are there on the day and the arrangement. And you know, the same is true of events that we don't organise. Obviously, there's a commitment there if you are taking a staff team out to deliver an event at, for example, the Carnival Fun Day, which was fun. We didn't have responsibility for the event, just for a good outreach. And we were able to make really good, meaningful connections and conversations at those events. But even that, there were 10 staff members there, so it would take 10 staff days to deliver. But again, it, you know, ticked a lot of objectives. So it's just to give you some idea as we go on to look at events, obviously, because we're trying to prepare the new work programme and present something that is realistic and that can be delivered. So that's really why I'm here talking about that. Obviously, this year we've had lots of fun things. We also promote lots of external events, which is really, really important. And of course, we haven't finished yet. We've still got lots of highlights to come to finish off the work programme. We're only halfway there. But Frome Busks this year is going to be supported by Frome College. Of course, we've got the Lantern Parade next week, which is another big old event. And that's really where we are at. Have you got the list of events? Whilst we're looking at resources, been working with Sarah, obviously she's budgeting, we're trying to put a draft budget to bring together. And so it was suggested that we bring this list to council just to let you know the events that we are looking at the moment. Obviously, it's important to have access to expertise and volunteers and partnerships. So this is how it's looking so far and where we are with partners. I hope that you will think that it is an interesting and ambitious list. It is ambitious in terms of events and the amount of staff time it takes. So all of those added up in terms of staff days comes to about 600. So just to let you know, that's sort of where we are really, and it's for councillors to discuss, let us know whether we're on the right lines. It's just really to get a bit of a steer. You know, there are other events that have not made this list. Play Day is a good example of that. We delivered the event this summer in the hope that other organisations might pick that up and move that forward, and we might like to support it in different ways next year. But the intention is not to always be the deliverer of events, but to try and get a good package of events that ticks all the strategic plan boxes. So really that's all from me.
Thank you. Yes, Rob.
Well, you know, I must say it's an incredibly impressive list, and you know, I'm you know, full of admiration for what you achieved. I suppose from reading your report, what the question which came to my mind was, how do you decide if there are, say, another 12 very worthy events which could be taken on? You seem to be saying we've got limited resources. So my question is, well, how do you decide? Or are you looking to us to try and help you decide? Or, you know, what's the criteria?
Yeah, I mean, it's my job to present possibilities that get presented to us. I guess it would be safe to say it's your job to decide what we deliver. You're my employees, you're our employees. That's right, isn't it? Yeah, so that's the, yeah. Yeah, so this is our suggested draft list so far, you know, and so the other thing about it is there is always flexibility. We always try and have flexibility, but obviously if we're having a big ambitious list, it's just for councillors to be aware that there's perhaps less flexibility moving forward.
Thanks, Rachel. And key what we really to deliver for us, along with other members of the staff, I think you do an extraordinary job. I think it's thanks to a lot of what you do that we have the reputation we have as a council, which is great. I'm just interested in just thinking about quickly. Things like Window Wonderland, which has always been a really popular thing. Is that because you're not intending to do anything?
No.
Promote it?
Yes.
But we also just promote it.
So Window Wonderland is a really excellent example of working in partnership. We've worked in a number of different ways with them. We always promote everything they do because it's always really good and exciting. Sometimes they come and we fund it. We fund it twice via the PB mechanism, PB events, and that's worked very well in the past. Other times they've had funding from external sources, and I think they've come through community grants, haven't they? Yeah. Yeah. But
we actually gave that certificate when we simply asked.
oh yes, so that was slightly different. That was a strategic decision on behalf of the neighbourhood networks in order to try and get more people involved with the neighbourhood networks. That was one way that they could access and support and kind of bring communities together by letting them get their packs of, yeah. Yes, so certainly we would continue to support their events. That's not because they didn't make the list, that doesn't mean that we won't champion them, and there will be plenty of other events that we always do try and champion.
We'll have a presence at other events too.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, this is, yeah. Yes.
Thank you. Hi.
Adam Boyden would like to ask a question, if that's okay.
Yeah, Adam, what's that?
Is the meeting? Can you explain how FTC could support very low risk community events like community picnics on other councils' land, which currently require onerous risk assessments and expensive public liability insurance?
Yeah, so that will be for Kate to answer because she's Hannah's dealing with
neighbourhoods.
neighbourhoods.
Doing some work with Adam and various other people to look at how, I think Adam was particularly talking about NEMDIP-owned pieces of land which require risk assessments and insurance and the permission of NEMDIP to use this land. So obviously the work that we're doing through the neighbourhood networks, Hannah has been doing quite a lot of work with NEMDIP. So we are positive that now we've made street closures easier, we might be able to make the use of NEMDIP bits of land easier as well. So, you know, we'll keep that momentum going. definitely maintain that dialogue with residents in those areas, and we encourage neighbours to get together in lots of different spaces, and they're able to use our spaces with relative ease. So we're supporting them in lots of different ways to deliver their events through the neighbourhood network.
Yeah, and the other thing to the other thing to add.
I accidentally logged in, I'm sorry.
Just the so the other thing to just say about that is actually every event does really, you know, require insurance and risk assessments and all of that stuff, regardless of which land it is, whose land it is, even if it's on FTC's land. It's just that the streamlining of that process, Hannah's working really hard to make happen. And obviously if it's on bigger pieces of land and it's bigger events, then Chris and I normally get involved anyway. So that would be the answer to that.
Thank you. Nick, Doug.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. Just one thing, Kate's comment there and Adam's point around events outside of Frome Town Council. That's what we're talking about. These all represent opportunity costs. So work together. And is there a way that we can start to charge in a realistic way for opportunity costs? Factor in basically when we do work for other councils, we can actually draw something back.
Work for other councils. We don't generally work for other councils. It wouldn't be for it, so it wouldn't be the council that we're risk assessing for. It's the council we'd be risk assessing and submitting to. So it would be our community that we would be doing the risk assessment for.
Okay, I thought this was a real outline how saying Frome Town Council come into the risk assessment.
No, oh no, sorry, no. I think no. We're still talking about events within Frome, and it's for our residents that we would be trying to support to deliver their own events. Yeah.
Thanks, Nick. Who? Anyone else?
Good job.
Okay. Yes. Well done. Fantastic. Best in the business. What do I have to do now? I've got.
Next time.
Okay.
Nothing.
Okay. Cool. Manager's review of WP.
So my name is Peter Wheelhouse. Hopefully you know me. I'm going to be speaking on behalf of the management group. The management group have been very busy putting together the report on our work programme so far this year. And hopefully you've all had a chance to read it. It's quite comprehensive, as I'm sure you'll have seen. And as we've got limited time now this evening, I'm going to give you a very quick whistle-stop tour of a few examples of work that we've been involved with as a staff team over the last 6 months. I'll take questions at the end. So next slide, please. Starting with the environment team, and as you would expect, the environment team is focused on keeping the parks and green spaces safe, welcoming and well managed over the last 6 months. And amongst other things, that's included completing the first full season of in-house grass cutting, and also completing some improvements to the parks and open spaces. And those have included things like more solar lights, the Dippy, and at the path between Mary Bailey and Victoria Park. And other examples include new planters, new benches across the town, and footpath improvements at Millennium Green, and many, many more improvements. I don't really have time to go into all of those, but hopefully you will have had an insight into those in the report. Next slide, please. And the environment team has supported and organised a variety of play activities and events in the town's parks. and installed equipment that will provide new play opportunities. An example shown here is den making in Welshmere Woods, and also there's a sandpit that's been installed at Packsaddle. Just a couple of examples there. Next slide, please. We continue to deliver high quality communications right across the work programme. You'll have already heard about our events programme. And I'm going to provide just a couple of other examples of the work of the marketing communications team so far this year, starting with the wraparound for the Frome Times, which hopefully you will all have seen. It was published last week to coincide with COP26 to give a vision of what Frome may be like in 2030. Next slide, please. And the People's Budget, both events and Town Vote 2021, they continue apace, allowing the community to make real choices about how a portion of their budget is spent. Next slide. And there have been lots of changes at the Town Hall, which have been well reported to you already. But weddings remain a source of joy, and wraparound hospitality facilities are now being expanded to help those who are attending those weddings. Next slide, please. The neighbourhood network continues to grow, and with the support of Hannah, enable increasing amounts of street level activity, including a trial of the Play Streets model for Somerset, which you'll see here in this slide. Next slide, please. And we're working with Children's Scrap Store to develop a play strategy. And this year, Frome celebrated National Play Day for the very first time, supported by our Find ambassadors. Those are young people completing their Duke of Edinburgh Awards. Next slide, please. Businesses in the town continue to be supported through networking events in partnership with Frome Chamber. We produce regular business bulletins on various topics, including grants, and our support for vocational training continues. And one such example of that is shown here in the right-hand slide. Back in September, we coordinated the Spring Forward event to showcase training opportunities in and around Frome at the Frome Carnival Fun Day. Next slide, please. Throughout the last 6 months, we've worked hard to ensure that the community has a voice when it comes to major planning applications, and that included arranging stakeholder engagement events on the proposals for Selwood Garden Community. Next slide. And we continue to explore opportunities for regeneration that will support a thriving town centre, including the ruins of the former Western Warehouse, shown in this particular slide here. And at the moment, the focus is very much on raising funding externally to enable feasibility studies to proceed and to enable buildings such as this to be refurbished in the future. Next slide, please. The Green and Healthy Futures project kicked off in April in partnership with Frome Medical Practice and Adventure. We're leading on 3 elements of the programme. First is Healthy Homes, which we've launched with the Centre for Sustainable Energy. Already we've reached 650 local residents through that particular scheme. Many people have also taken part in the Cycle Together scheme. And we've developed a partnership with the University of Plymouth that will help to measure the impact of this programme over the 2 years of its life. Next slide. And we're also in the process of working with people in Frome to design 2 significant active travel projects. One is our local cycling and walking infrastructure plan for Frome, and the second is the design of a school street pilot around a number of Frome schools. The aim is to make walking and cycling the obvious choice for short journeys in the town. Next slide. We've been exploring new areas of work around resilience. We held a workshop for local food producers and retailers recently, which 40 people attended. And we've set up a food network newsletter, and monthly meetings are being held through Future Shed. The last slide, please. So finally, I must mention all the central team services that oil the wheels of the machine, including finance, IT and HR. And as the report shows, the external auditors have approved the year end to March 2021, and income and expenditure is predicted to be comfortably within budget for the current year ending March 2022. Budgeting work for 2022-23 is now taking place, and we'll be bringing proposals to us in January. IT, including audiovisual facilities and facilitating both home and office working for staff, has been a key component of the central team's work, alongside finances, payroll, human resources and training work. And a big software development project, the Contact Relationship Management System, will be a key activity for the second half of the year into 2022-23. Very finally, included in the work of our central services is the work being led by Paul Wynne to prepare the Council for Unitary. So that's the end of the presentation. Obviously, I'll take any questions if you have them. Scott.
It's not really a question, it's just more of a statement. Pre-pandemic, a lot of town councils, district councils, county councils nationally were struggling. It was not a secret. I think the fact that the pandemic happened, a lot of councils will use that time to consolidate and maybe strip back to what they were doing to try and save a bit of money, to try and shore things up. So I think it's highly commendable that Frome Town Council, and I don't mean us, we get the praise for banging on about toilets and marketplaces and stuff, but you guys, you do the work, and it's ever increasingly harder for you to do that work because there's not as much money, things cost more, there's more needed to be done, there's more paperwork. So the fact that you have not only carried on doing things through the pandemic and through last year and adapted other things so that they could still be delivered is just absolutely fantastic. And next year is just going to be as tough as ever, trying to get things done on a shoestring. And I think that the town council, and again, I said the staff, the officers, is known for punching above its weight, but achieving those aspirations. And I think it's something that, and I hope I speak for everyone else, but I say it's fantastic. And we are always and forever in awe of the things that this council achieves. Thank you.
I'll certainly share that message with the rest of the staff.
Well, we've got it on record now. We've got it recorded.
Any more questions?
Thank you, Peter. Okay. Last on the agenda, number 9.
So I'm not even on the bill tonight.
You are?
I'm for someone else and I still get it.
Sorry, guys. Sorry, I tell a lie. We're not there yet. Sorry, we're only on 8. Sorry. Sorry, my bad.
Keep staying.
Can I just, yeah. I did the right report, and it's more to shout about the great work of Frome Town Council. So it's been a long time in the making, pandemic-wise, getting the application through and everything. But the National Association of Local Councils, if you weren't aware, so NALC, commonly referred to, have a council award scheme, just to highlight those councils that are doing great work and perhaps in some cases are going above and beyond. So we applied for their Gold Award, and just quickly, in case anyone hadn't read the report, the Quality Gold Award demonstrates that a council is at the forefront of best practice and achieves excellence in governance, community leadership and council development. Quality Gold councils provide leadership for their communities, bring people together, have excellent business planning processes, ensuring value for money, as well as constantly seeking new innovations and opportunities to improve. They highlight the very best we as a sector can achieve for our communities. And a couple of weeks ago, we found out that we were successful in our application for the Gold Award. So well done, everyone. Team effort. We've got a nice shiny new logo to share, and then Rachel's team will be shouting it far and wide so everyone knows. So.
Is that the highest achievable?
Yes, there was 3 levels of award, and the gold was the very top. And I think it's valid until about 2025, and then they can make another application. Until you're being wonderful.
How many councils are in that goal?
It's difficult to say because obviously now, as in the title is national, we did try and sort of look in the local area. There's quite a lot that have got the sort of the foundation award, and there were some putting in gold awards and the quality award as well. So I couldn't say for sure, but we're definitely, I would say, in the minority in Somerset for having gold, but I couldn't give you an exact figure.
Excellent. Anyone else have anything to add to that?
Yeah. So, should we just do it like this? You've obviously read the report.
Yeah, brilliant.
I'd like to ask you 3 questions. No, do you have any questions? I mean, essentially, this is about the unitary. I think you've been quite well updated as we go through. There is a meeting planned around the first section of this, the devolution of assets and services in particular, so that staff and councillors can work together with our advisors to look at those particular assets that we would be interested in. In the meantime, Paul has had conversations with Mendip and asked directly about some particular assets that we were interested in, namely based centred around the market yard. And they have come back this week to say that unfortunately they have a responsibility to maintain or retain any assets that have an income stream attached to them over the coming year. So obviously that doesn't mean those things are off the table. It just means that now the statutory order has come through from the government and we're in a limbo space for the next year. We can start to build up some solid business cases and take them to the new unitary in due course. And then the second section of this report is the bit that I'm particularly interested in, because that's around the local community networks and how we work with our parishes, and gives you a little bit of information about the fact that we are now working on a pilot LCN for the Frome area, and that the topic that we are focusing on that pilot LCN on is our work with children, young people and their families, and working with our parishes, as well as a whole range of statutory and voluntary sector partners to make sure that we are improving services in this area for our young people. So Nadia.
Rob?
I was under the impression that the LCNs in other councils are really rather toothless and have no capacity to actually enact anything other than just to make recommendations to the unitary council. Have you any further information as to whether this particular LCN is going to be different to that?
Well, that's why we were quite interested in piloting and being one of the 4 pilot areas across the county. We're working very closely with the unitary team to make sure that what we're putting in process locally gives it some teeth and doesn't make it necessarily just a committee coming down from the unitary, but is very much embedded as part of the unitary, and in particular working with partners. But ultimately, the decisions that are made at a local level may not require the unitary authority to do anything. They may not require funding. It may be about us identifying local issues and local solutions, which we know we did quite well already, and working with some of the statutory partners to make sure that we're shoring up that offer for residents. But so it's just making sure that as we go through this, we're working all those things through. There has been quite a lot of work done, obviously, in Wiltshire around LCNs, and they've reshaped those, and those now have a bit more gravitas. Cumbria seems to be an interesting example, and we've learned a lot from listening and talking to colleagues in Cornwall. So they've been trialled enough for us to be able to pull the best bits, and for us to then sort of overlaid those on our way of working and working with our local partners to make sure that we're building them in a timely and efficient way. So we'll see.
Scott, then Rich. Are we having similar conversations about assets and liabilities with the Somerset, or is it just Mendip?
Yeah, so the consultants have a list of all of the assets that are available in Frome, or that are owned by the district and the county. We are starting to think about which ones might be potentially, on the face of it, might look more appealing than others, but that's not to say we're disregarding any of the other ones. And as we work through, under the advice of the consultants, really, about what opportunities there are with those assets, we're starting to have that dialogue and those conversations. So, but now we're into the next phase of the unitary. It will require all 5 councils to agree any devolution of any asset and services to us between now and vesting day in May 2023. So, the window, if you like, for anything to be directly transferred from either Mendip or Somerset to us has gone, and now it would go through, albeit a smaller unitary, but a process. In Bridgewater, they're piloting asset transfer. And looking at how they can streamline that process.
I'm primarily thinking about the buildings that will formally get set buildings. So obviously in my area is the Key Centre.
Yes, and they are definitely on our list of
Good,
things to
I can
explore.
tell them they won't be able to argue about it being an income stream. After a Freedom of Information Act request told me that they were running 2019 to 2020, running it at, and I don't know how, running at a £30,000 loss. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely, definitely one on our list to discuss and explore.
Cool. Very interesting.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks, Jay. It's interesting. It strikes me that we're as councillors. I'm certainly very keen to grab as much as we can. Let's get the library, let's get the Key Centre. But I think from staff's point of view, I can see there's probably some reluctance sometimes. I can almost sense Paul Wynne sort of going, oh, God, no, please don't suggest taking on the library. Because obviously it's going to change your work practices, it's going to change your workload. But I would just urge that you do this positively. And I think, the last thing that's going to happen to Frome Town Council, hopefully, is that there's staff redundancies. But there will be redundancies, across Mendip and across Somerset. But from our point of view, we're not about doing that. I would see it as take it as a challenge and take it as something to enjoy. And we'll do whatever we can as councillors to properly resource these things and to make sure we're not taking on a dead duck without resources. So I'm thinking from your point of view, if I was doing your job and you're already that busy, I'd be thinking, I can't take that on as well, can I? So we've got to adequately resource that. And give you support to be able to do that, I think. So
there are lots of opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's making sure that the business case stacks up for those opportunities, but it also doesn't mean taking it on a day at like for like. So taking on the library doesn't necessarily mean just running the library.
So much.
There are lots of other things that might make it stack up and therefore become greater than the sum of its parts. Yeah. So, but as you can imagine, the lists are huge, and there is probably a place that although we might be pushing at the way that children's services, for example, might be run, we probably don't want to take on children's social care and the delivery of the education requirement that they statutory authorities have. So there are some balances.
And hopefully we've got that day coming up, haven't we?
We have, yeah, 1st and 2nd of December. Poor Laura is just losing her mind trying to do the meeting dates.
I've changed it 3 times, it's the 1st.
But please come to that with ideas and as creative as possible, because that's what we can all put in the pot together.
Because I think really, if we put an ask, if we've got a organised, detailed ask with some costings in there, and we present that and say this is what we want, it puts us in a much better position. We don't want that, but we want this. We'll take that, don't really want to take that. If we've got a big ask, if we've already decided what we don't want, I think that puts us in a much stronger position.
Well, you can tell I'm really excited by this.
Yeah,
whole military thing. But some of my colleagues haven't quite caught up. So if you can encourage.
And department.
Yeah, the other thing is just, as you say, it's just about being creative. There are assets out there that you wouldn't want to run a sports centre, but there are assets that you could take, like, and then depending on obviously contracts and things like that, to go to a kit, be outsourced and work that way. So there's stuff that I don't think we should take anything off the table. I think we should look at as much as we can, as Rip says. But if that means just being creative about then what we then transition out of, once we've taken that, we can manage in a different way.
And the cheese and grain is a really good example of something that where we've taken on, but we don't directly manage ourselves, and we're not necessarily involved in the day-to-day running of. So it doesn't mean that if we're taking something on, we have to. It's about a good fit for our residents, but the business case does still need to nevertheless stack up, because we're pretty certain that there will be, the dowries are going to be a thing, and ongoing funding coming through are not going to be. This is, you know,
The Somerset Allmend have got.
it's a cost-saving exercise ultimately, becoming a unitary. So.
Anything else? Anyone else? Thank you, Kate. Thank you, everyone.
One question.
No. Go on.
I just wanted to know if anybody in the room has any news potential. I know we were thinking about hearing roughly about now when the next election is going to be. Do we know anything further?
That must have been confirmed.
It has. Okay.
We should hear by the end of this month. So we will let you know as soon as.
I mean, Paul gave us the indication in the last email it's going to be in the next 2 weeks, and that seemed like about 10 days ago. So,
They definitely said by the 31 days of this month, 31st of November.
Okay.
No. All right. It'll be the 1st of December.
Cool. Right. All right. So the next meeting will be at 7 p.m. on Wednesday, the 19th of January, 2022, and it'll be in here and on Zoom. Happy New